Tay stepped off the transport ship and took his first breath of Earth air. It smelled different from his homeworld, heavier, filled with the sense of machines and too many living beings packed together. As a Novan, his senses were sharper than those of humans. His skin was pale blue and his large eyes could see colors humans could not, but it was his mind that truly set him apart. Like all Novans, Tay could sense the thoughts and feelings of others. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Tay," said the human official who met him at the landing pad. "I'm Director Park. We're honored to have the first Novan diplomat on our planet." Tay bowed his head slightly, mimicking the greeting he had studied. "The honor is mine. High people are eager to learn more about humans." Director Park smiled, but Tay could sense worry beneath the expression. Humans were always like this, thinking one thing while showing another. It confused him. "Your assigned cultural liaison will meet you at the Defense Ministry," Director Park said as they walked to a waiting vehicle. "Captain Han is one of our finest officers. He will help you understand our military traditions." Ty nodded. This was why he had come to Earth. Of all the species the Novans had met in their explorations, humans were the most puzzling. They built beautiful art and music, yet also created weapons that could destroy worlds. They spoke of peace while preparing for war. The Novan Council wanted to understand this contradiction. The vehicle moved through the city of Seoul. Tay watched the tall buildings and crowds of people with wonder. His own world had fewer people, living in harmony with their environment. They had no word for war in their language. The concept had to be explained to Tay before his mission. At the Defense Ministry, a tall man in a crisp uniform waited. His posture was straight, his face calm. "Ambassador Tay, this is Captain Han," Director Park said. Captain Han bowed. "Welcome to Earth. I look forward to our cultural exchange." Tay sensed honesty from the captain, but also caution. "Thank you for agreeing to teach me. I have many questions about human military history." "I'm sure you do," Han replied. "Let's start with a tour of our training facilities." As they walked, Han explained, "My people have fought wars for thousands of years. It shaped who we are, but why?" Tay asked. "On my world, we solve problems through talking and understanding each other's minds." Han's lips formed a small smile. "That must be peaceful. But humans can't read minds, and not everyone wants peace." The training ground was filled with young soldiers practicing fighting moves. Tay watched as they struck at each other with controlled power. "Are they angry at each other?" Tay asked. Han shook his head. "No, they are friends. But they must learn to fight to protect what they care about." This made no sense to Tay. On his world, no one needed protection. There were no predators, no enemies. The Novans had evolved without the concept of physical danger. Over the next few days, Tay learned about Earth's many wars. Han showed him videos of battles, models of weapons, and maps of strategies. Tay tried to understand but felt more confused with each lesson. "Your people fight because you are afraid?" he asked Han one evening as they sat in the captain's office. "Sometimes," Han admitted, "fear can make us fight. But so can love to protect others. And sometimes duty or belief in something greater than ourselves." Tay shook his head. "We have love on my world and duty, but we have never needed to hurt others because of them." "You are fortunate," Han said quietly, "but the universe is not all like your world." As if to prove Han's point, an urgent message arrived the next morning. Han's face grew serious as he read it. "What is wrong?" Tay asked, sensing the sudden tension. "Bad news," Han said. "A hostile species called the Vrax has been detected near our outer colonies. I've been reactivated for service." "You must go to fight?" Tay asked. "Yes, it's a defensive positioning mission. We'll show force to convince them to retreat." Han paused, studying Tay. "Would you like to come with me?" Tay was surprised. "Is that allowed?" "Not exactly," Han admitted. "But I could list you as an observer. It would give you a chance to see how we operate, to understand us better." Tay considered this. The Novan Council would disapprove of him putting himself in potential danger. But wasn't understanding humans the purpose of his mission? "I would like to come," he decided. 3 days later, they boarded the military vessel Sejong. Tay had never been on a warship before. The Novan ships were designed for comfort and scientific research. This ship felt different. Hard, functional, ready for danger. The crew watched Tay with curious eyes as Han introduced him. "This is Ambassador Tay from Nova. He's here to learn about our culture. Treat him with respect." A woman with short hair and serious eyes stepped forward. "Lieutenant G, Tactical Officer," she said with a small bow. A large man with a loud voice came next. Sergeant Kim. Weapons specialist. He grinned at Tay. First alien you've met, G? Second, she replied calmly. I met a Centauri trader last year. A quieter man approached. I'm Medic's son, he said. If you need any medical assistance, Ambassador, please let me know. Your biology is different from ours. Tay thanked them all, trying to process the mix of emotions he sensed. Curiosity, caution, and something else. A tense energy he hadn't felt before. As the ship prepared to leave Earth orbit, Han showed Tay to his quarters. We'll be traveling for 3 days to reach the outer colony. Feel free to observe the crew, ask questions. That's why you're here. Tay spent those 3 days watching the humans with growing fascination. They trained daily, running through drills that simulated attacks. They checked their weapons and equipment repeatedly. Some gathered in the ship's small chapel to pray. Others exercised until their bodies were exhausted. Why did they do these things? Tay asked Han as they observed the crew. Preparation, Han explained, physical and mental. When facing danger, being prepared helps control fear. Are they afraid now? Tay asked. Yes, Han said simply. We all are. But we learn to use fear, not be controlled by it. This was a new idea for Tay. On Nova, fear was rare, a response to falling or sudden loud noises, not something that lived in the mind day after day. On the 4th day, Han invited Ty to the bridge. The main screen showed a distant planet with a small moon. That's Colony 7, Han explained, one of our newest settlements. About 5,000 people live there. And the Vraks want to attack them? Why? Tay asked. Han's face darkened. The Vraks take what they want, resources, territory. They don't ask permission. Tay tried to imagine a species that would harm others for gain. It went against everything the Novans believed. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. Lieutenant G's hands moved quickly over her control panel. Captain, she said, her voice tight. We're detecting a Vraks vessel approaching. It's moving fast, much faster than our intelligence suggested. Han straightened. How long until contact? Less than an hour. They'll reach the colony before us. Han turned to Tay, his face now hard with focus. This is not supposed to happen. The Vraks shouldn't be this far in yet. You should return to the evacuation shuttle. Tay started to reply when the ship suddenly rocked violently. He fell against the wall as lights flickered. Impact, Sergeant Kim shouted. They're already in range. Battle stations, Han ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. Shields at maximum. The crew moved with practiced speed. Tay watched as they transformed before his eyes. No longer individuals, but parts of a single fighting unit. Another hit shook the ship harder. Sparks flew from a control panel. Tay felt something new then. A cold sensation in his chest, a tightness in his throat. He realized this must be what humans called fear. Real fear. Not the simple startled response he knew, but deep primal fear for survival. Tay, Han said firmly, grabbing his arm. It's too late for the shuttle. Stay on the bridge. Stay behind me. As the ship turned to face its attacker, Tay saw the Vraks vessel on the screen. It was dark, angular, threatening. Nothing like the sleek Novan ships or even the functional human vessels. This is Captain Han of the Earth Defense Force, Han said into the communication system. You are approaching a protected colony. Withdraw immediately. There was no response except another blast that hit the Sejong directly. The lights went out for several seconds before emergency power activated. In the red glow of the emergency lights, Tay watched Han's face. He expected to see the captain overcome by the same fear that was now freezing Tay's own thoughts. Instead, he saw focus and determination. They won't respond to communication, Han told his crew. Prepare to engage. We need to buy time for the colony. As the human crew prepared for battle, Tay realized he was witnessing something his people had never understood, how humans faced fear. Not by avoiding it or eliminating it, but by moving forward despite it. The Vraks ship fired again and the battle truly began. The Sejong shuddered as another blast from the Vraks ship hit its shields. Tay gripped the edge of a console to stay upright. All around him, the human crew worked with quick, sure movements. Their faces were tight with tension, but their hands remained steady. Captain Han stood at the center of the bridge, giving orders in a calm voice that cut through the noise of alarms and damage reports. Evasive pattern Delta, he commanded. Lieutenant G, target their weapons array. Lieutenant G's fingers flew across her control panel. Targeting, Captain. Ready to fire. Fire, Han ordered. The Sejong's weapons released a burst of energy that struck the Vrak ship. Tay felt the vibration through the floor. Direct hit, G reported. Minimal damage to their shields. Sergeant Kim entered the bridge, his uniform singed. Engineering reports the main power coupling is damaged. We're running at 70% capacity. Han nodded. Tell them to reroute power from non-essential systems. We need everything we can get for shields and weapons. Tay watched in fascination. These humans were afraid. He could sense it clearly with his telepathic abilities, yet they functioned with remarkable efficiency. The fear didn't stop them. Ambassador, Han said, turning to Tai, I apologize for involving you in this conflict. This was supposed to be a simple show of force. I am here to learn, Tay replied, though I admit this is more intense than I expected. A small smile crossed Han's face. War usually is. The ship rocked again, harder this time. A panel exploded in sparks and a crew member cried out in pain. Medic to the bridge, Han called. Medic's son rushed in, carrying a medical kit. He moved to the injured crew member without hesitation, though Tay could sense his fear was as strong as anyone's. Captain, Lieutenant G said, Colony 7 is reporting that civilian evacuation has begun, but they need at least 6 hours to complete it. Han's face hardened. We need to buy them that time. He turned to Sergeant Kim. Prepare the secondary weapons array. We'll target their engines when they make their next pass. Tay was puzzled. You cannot defeat them. Your ship is damaged. Why continue to fight? Because those colonists need time, Han said simply. Every minute we keep the Vraks occupied is a minute more for people to escape. This concept was new to Tay. On his world, when faced with a problem that couldn't be solved, Novans would seek compromise or withdraw to reconsider. The idea of sacrificing oneself for others was understood, but rarely necessary in their peaceful society. Over the next hour, the battle continued. The Sejong was clearly outmatched, but through skilled maneuvering and tactical decisions, they managed to inflict some damage on the Vrak ship while protecting the colony. During a brief lull, Tay observed the human crew. Some prayed quietly at their stations. Others checked and rechecked their equipment. A few shared grim jokes. Captain Han moved among them, offering a word of encouragement here, a nod of approval there. Why do some of them laugh? Tay asked Han when the captain returned to his side. There is nothing funny about this situation. Humor helps humans cope with fear, Han explained. It reminds us that we are still alive, still ourselves, even in danger. Tay tried to understand this. Novans had humor, but they used it for joy and connection, not to face death. The ship's communications officer called out, Captain, we're receiving a message from the colony. The first evacuation ships are away. About 20% of the colonists are now safe. A small cheer went up from the crew. Han nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now we just need to hold out a bit longer. Just then, a massive blast rocked the Sejong. The lights failed completely for several seconds. Direct hit to our power core, Sergeant Kim reported when emergency systems came back online. Shields are down to 15%. Reroute all available power to shields, Han ordered. Weapons status? Main weapons offline, Lieutenant G reported. Secondary array still functional, but at reduced power. Han studied the tactical display. They're positioning for another attack run. Their target is our propulsion system. They want to disable us, not destroy us. Why would they keep us intact? Tay asked. Han's face was grim. The Vraks don't just destroy. They capture, take resources, study new species. Tay felt a new kind of fear at these words, not just for himself, but for what might happen to the humans. We can't take another direct hit, Lieutenant G warned. Han made a quick decision. Set collision course. The crew looked at him in shock, but no one questioned the order. Captain? Tay asked, not understanding. We're going to ram them, Han explained. Not to destroy them, their ship is too large, but to damage their propulsion and buy more time for the colony. But what about us? Tay asked. We'll evacuate to the colony moon. Small teams in escape pods. The Sejong will be on autopilot for the final approach. Han turned to address his crew. Prepare for emergency evacuation. Take only essential equipment and weapons. We'll regroup on the colony moon and continue the fight from there. The crew moved with practiced efficiency despite the danger. Tay marveled at their discipline. Escape pods are ready, Captain, Lieutenant G reported. All sections reporting in. Good. Han turned to Tay. You'll come with my team. Stay close. As they moved through the corridors toward the escape pods, a sudden explosion tore through the hull ahead of them. The blast knocked them off their feet. When Tay looked up, he saw that a section of the corridor had collapsed, trapping several crew members on the other side. "Help!" called a voice from beyond the wreckage. "We're trapped!" Without hesitation, Sergeant Kim rushed toward the danger. "I'll get them out!" Tay was shocked. Kim's fear was a bright flame in his mind, yet the sergeant moved toward it, not away. "Kim, be careful," Han called. "Ship integrity is failing." Kim worked quickly, shifting debris and helping injured crew members through the gap he created. Tay could sense the effort it took for Kim to control his fear, to focus on the task despite the danger. As the last trapped crew member was pulled to safety, another explosion shook the ship. A piece of the ceiling broke loose, falling toward Kim. Lieutenant G shouted a warning. Kim looked up, but there was no time to move. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Tay reacted. He stretched out his hand, using the weak telekinetic ability all Novans possessed. It wasn't strong enough to stop the falling debris completely, but it slowed it just enough for Kim to dodge the worst of the impact. Kim stared at Tay in amazement. "Did you do that?" Tay nodded, surprised at himself. "I did not know if it would work. Our abilities are not very strong." "Strong enough?" Kim said with a grin, despite the blood running down his face from where the debris had grazed him. "Thanks, Blue Man." Han looked at Tay with new respect. "Let's get to the escape pods before anything else falls on our heads." They reached the escape pod bay where the rest of the crew was boarding the small vessels. Each pod could hold 6 people and had basic supplies for survival. "Lieutenant G, you'll pilot our pod," Han ordered. "Sergeant Kim, Medic Sun, Ambassador Tay, and I will complete the team." As they strapped into their seats, Tay noticed that Lieutenant G's hands were trembling slightly as she prepared the pod for launch. Yet her voice remained steady as she reported, "All systems ready, Captain." "Launch," Han commanded. The pod detached from the dying Sejong with a mechanical clunk. Through the small viewport, Tay watched as the other pods launched, small dots against the blackness of space. The Sejong, now on autopilot, turned toward the wreck ship. Its damaged engines flared as it accelerated on its collision course. "Will it work?" Tay asked quietly. "It should disable their main engines," Han replied. "Not destroy them, but slow them down significantly." They watched as the Sejong struck the much larger wreck ship. The impact was followed by a series of explosions along the wreck's vessel's hull. "Direct hit to their engine section," Lieutenant G reported, checking the pod's sensors. "Their power output is dropping." Han nodded with satisfaction. That should give the colony more time to evacuate. Their pod, along with the others, streaked toward the small moon that orbited Colony 7. Tay looked back at the damaged Varak ship and the debris that had been the Sejong. "You sacrificed your ship," he said to Han. "Ships can be rebuilt," Han replied. "Lives cannot be replaced." This simple statement contained a wisdom Tay had not expected from a species so comfortable with violence. Perhaps humans understood the value of life precisely because they knew how easily it could be lost. As their pod entered the moon's atmosphere, Lieutenant G skillfully guided it toward a small military outpost visible on the surface. "The Colony Defense Force has a base here," Han explained. "We'll join them and help coordinate the continued evacuation and defense." Tay looked out at the barren, rocky landscape of the moon. It seemed a harsh place to continue a fight. Yet as he observed the determined faces of the humans around him, he realized they would fight anywhere, under any conditions, if they believed their cause was just. The pod landed with a hard bump. The hatch opened to reveal a group of soldiers waiting for them. "Captain Han," said their leader, "we received word of your arrival." "The situation?" "The Sejong is lost," Han reported. "But we damaged the Vrax vessel. It bought us some time." "What's the status of the evacuation?" "About 40% complete. We need at least 4 more hours." Han nodded. "Then we'll give them 4 hours." He turned to his team. "Rest while you can. We'll need to be ready when the Vrax land." The moon base was small but well equipped. It had been built to support the colony on the planet below, with living quarters for 50 people, supply storage, and a modest defense system. Now it held over 100, the surviving crew of the Sejong and the base's regular personnel. Tai sat in a corner of the command center, watching the humans prepare for the coming attack. Captain Han stood with the base commander, a woman named Major Lee, studying maps and discussing strategy. Lieutenant G worked with the communications team, coordinating with the evacuation ships. Sergeant Kim helped distribute weapons and equipment. Ambassador, Medic's son approached, carrying a small device. May I check you for injuries? The pod landing was rough, Tay nodded. I am unhurt, but thank you for your concern. Son scanned him anyway, studying the readings with professional interest. Your physiology is fascinating. Your heart rate barely increased during the battle. Novans have different physical responses to stress, Tay explained. Our bodies do not produce as much adrenaline as humans. But I assure you I felt fear. Son smiled slightly. I believe you. Fear is universal, I think, even if we show it differently. He hesitated, then asked, Is it true that your people can read minds? Not exactly read them, Tay clarified. We sense emotions and general thoughts. It is why we never developed weapons on our world. When you can feel another's pain, you cannot wish to cause it. Son considered this. Yet you helped us against the Vraks. I acted without thinking, Tay admitted. I saw Sergeant Kim in danger and responded. That's how it often happens in battle, Son said. We don't have time to think, only to act. Their conversation was interrupted when Captain Han called for attention. Listen up, Han said, his voice carrying across the room. The Vrak ship is damaged but still operational. They've launched landing craft. We expect ground forces to reach us within 2 hours. A murmur went through the assembled humans. Tay could sense their fear sharpening, becoming more focused. The good news, Han continued, is that the colony evacuation is proceeding. 60% complete now. We need to hold this position until all civilians are away. Major Lee stepped forward. We've set up defensive positions around the base perimeter. Teams of 4 rotating shifts. Captain Han's people will integrate with mine. She looked around the room. This won't be easy. The Vraks outnumber us, but we have the advantage of position and preparation. As the briefing continued, Tay noticed something odd. Despite their fear, many of the humans seemed almost energized. There was a clarity to their thoughts, a sharpness to their focus that hadn't been there before. When the meeting ended, people broke into small groups to prepare. Tay approached Captain Han. May I ask something? Tay said. Han nodded. Of course. The humans, their fear is strong, but they seem ready, almost eager. I don't understand, Han considered how to explain. Humans have evolved to function in danger. Fear sharpens our senses, quickens our reactions. When we know a fight is coming, our bodies prepare for it. Some call it the warrior's calm, a state of readiness beyond fear. But not everyone here is a warrior, Tay pointed out. True, Han agreed. But all humans have the capacity for it. It's in our biology, our history. When survival is at stake, we find strength we didn't know we had. Tay thought about this as he followed Han to the equipment room. There, Sergeant Kim was distributing gear to the Sejong crew. Ambassador, Kim called with a grin, I saved something for you. He held up a protective vest. It might not fit perfectly, but it's better than nothing. Tay was surprised. You want me to join the defense? You're stuck here with us, Kim said. Might as well be protected. Han stepped in. Ambassador Tay is a diplomat, not a soldier, Kim. I know, Kim replied. But he saved my life on the ship. He's got some moves. He winked at Tay. I have no training in fighting, Tay said. You don't need to fight, Han assured him. But Kim is right about the protection. We don't know how long we'll be here or what will happen. Tay accepted the vest, feeling its unfamiliar weight as he put it on. A human weapon would be useless in his hands, but perhaps he could help in other ways. The next hour passed in tense preparation. Tay helped Medic's son organize medical supplies. His telekinetic abilities, though weak, allowed him to move small objects with precision, which Son found useful. You would make a good surgeon, Son commented as Tay arranged instruments. On my world, we heal through mental connection, Tay explained. We can help the body heal itself faster by aligning our thoughts with the patient's. Son looked intrigued. That's remarkable. Perhaps someday our peoples could exchange medical knowledge. If we survive this, Tay said quietly. Son's face became serious. We'll survive. Humans are very good at that, if nothing else. The alarm sounded before Tay could respond. A voice over the communication system announced, Vrak's landing craft detected. 5 minutes to ground contact. Han appeared at the door. Son medical team on standby. Tay, stay here with them. This is the safest place in the base. Tay nodded, but as Han turned to leave, he said, "Captain, good luck." Han paused. "We make our own luck, Ambassador." As Han left, Tay felt a strange impulse to go with him, to see what would happen. But he remained with Sun as ordered. The medical bay was set up to receive casualties, with beds prepared and equipment ready. Through the base's communication system, they could hear reports from the defensive positions. The Vraks had landed and were approaching from multiple directions. The first shots were fired. Tay winced as he sensed the spike of fear and determination from the humans at the perimeter. "Are you all right?" Sun asked, noticing Tay's reaction. "I can feel them," Tay explained. "The humans fighting. Their emotions are intense." Sun nodded with understanding. "It must be overwhelming for you." "Yes, but also..." Tay searched for the words. "Illuminating. I never understood before how beings could choose to face danger. Now I begin to see." The first casualties arrived soon after. Soldiers with burns, cuts, broken bones. Sun and his team worked quickly, efficiently. Tay helped where he could, passing equipment, holding bandages, speaking calming words to the injured. One soldier grabbed Tay's arm as he passed. "They're not like us," the man said, his voice strained with pain. "The Vraks, they're wrong somehow." "What do you mean?" Tay asked. "No fear," the soldier whispered. I looked in their eyes. Nothing there. Like machines but alive. Sun moved the soldier to a treatment area before Tay could ask more questions. But the words stayed with him. A species without fear, was that better or worse than having fear but facing it? The battle continued outside. Reports came in regularly. Vraks forces pushing at the eastern perimeter, humans holding the main entrance, ammunition running low at the northern position. Through it all, Tay could sense the human emotions: fear, pain, determination, even moments of triumph when a position was successfully defended. Then Tay felt something new. A strange blankness, a void in the emotional landscape he was sensing. At first he thought it was just exhaustion affecting his abilities, but the sensation grew stronger. "Something's wrong," he told Sun. "I feel nothing. Where there should be emotion." Sun looked confused. "What do you mean?" Before Tay could explain, the lights in the medical bay flickered. A moment later, the door slid open. Instead of more human casualties, a Vrak soldier stood there. It was Tay's first sight of the enemy. The Vraks was tall, with gray-green skin and 4 arms. Its face had no nose, just breathing slits, and its eyes were large and black. It carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Sun reacted instantly, placing himself between the Vraks and his patients. "This is a medical facility," he said firmly. "These people are non-combatants." The Vraks tilted its head, studying Sun. Then, without any change in expression, it raised its weapon. Tay didn't think. He just acted, reaching out with his telekinetic ability. It wasn't strong enough to knock the weapon away, but he managed to push it slightly as it fired. The energy blast hit the wall instead of Sun. The Vraks turned its black eyes to Tay. There was intelligence there, but no emotion that Tay could sense or understand. No fear, no anger, nothing recognizable. Sun used the distraction to grab a surgical tool and throw it at the Vraks with surprising accuracy. It embedded itself in one of the breathing slits. The Vraks made a harsh sound and staggered back. "Run!" Sun shouted to Tay and the mobile patients. "Get to the inner chamber!" Tay helped a wounded soldier to his feet, supporting him as they moved toward the back of the medical bay. Behind them, Sun continued to fight, using whatever tools were at hand. Other medical staff helped more patients evacuate. They had almost reached the inner chamber when Tay heard Sun cry out. He turned to see the medic fall, struck by the Vrax's weapon. Without thinking, Tay lowered the injured soldier to the floor and turned back. The Vrax was advancing on the fallen Sun, weapon raised for a killing shot. Tay felt something new then, not just fear, but rage. This being would kill Sun, who had done nothing but help others, who had been kind to Tay, a stranger. The emotion was so powerful it seemed to amplify Tay's abilities. He reached out mentally and pushed with all his strength. The Vrax stumbled, thrown off balance by a force it couldn't see. Its shot went wide. Tay ran to Sun, grabbing him under the arms and dragging him toward safety. The Vrax recovered quickly and aimed again. Then the door behind the Vrax slid open and Captain Han's plan was dangerous but simple. They would use Tay's telepathic abilities to confuse and disrupt the Vrax forces while the last colonists escaped. The Vrax want your abilities, Han explained as they gathered in the command center. Let's give them a taste of what those abilities can do. Lieutenant G had analyzed the device taken from the infiltrators. It's designed to detect and track telepathic emissions, she reported. But it might also be vulnerable to being overloaded by those same emissions. Can you amplify your abilities somehow? Han asked Tay. Tay considered this. Normally no, but there is a meditative state my people use for healing. It allows us to project our thoughts more strongly, though only for short periods. That might be enough, Han said. We just need to create confusion in their ranks while the final evacuation happens. Tay looked at the tactical display. The last group of colonists was still making their way to the emergency landing pad. The Vrax forces were closing in from multiple directions. I will need time to prepare, Tay said. The meditative state is not easy to achieve, especially under stress. How much time? Han asked. 20 minutes, perhaps 30. Han nodded. We can give you that. Major Lee and I will lead a diversionary attack to draw their attention away from both you and the evacuation route. Major Lee looked skeptical. A direct assault? We're outnumbered. Not a direct assault, Han clarified. Hit-and-run tactics. Multiple small teams striking quickly and withdrawing. The goal is to confuse and divide their forces. Lieutenant G spoke up. I can help with that. We can use the base's communication system to create false signals. Make it seem like we have more people than we do. Good, Han approved. Tay, you'll stay here with a small security team. Once you're ready, Lieutenant G will guide you on where to focus your abilities for maximum effect. Tay looked around at the humans preparing for battle. Their faces were tired, many were injured, but their determination never wavered. He felt humbled by their courage. I will do my best, he promised. As the others prepared, Medic Sun approached Tay from his sickbed. He moved slowly, clearly still in pain from his wound. You should be resting, Tay told him. Sun managed a small smile. Probably. But I wanted to give you something. He handed Tay a small device. It's a neural stabilizer. We use them for patients with seizures. It might help you maintain your meditative state under stress. Tay accepted the device with gratitude. Thank you. How did you know I would need this? I didn't, Sun admitted. But I've been thinking about your abilities since you mentioned them. This seemed like a logical support. How are you feeling? Tay asked. I'll live, Sun said, which is the goal for all of us today. He paused. Be careful, Tay. What you're attempting is dangerous. Mental strain can cause physical harm. I know, Tay said. But as your Captain Han says, some things are worth the risk. Sun nodded. You're starting to think like a human. Is that good or bad? Tay asked with a small smile. I guess we'll find out, Sun replied. The diversionary teams left, led by Captain Han and Major Lee. Lieutenant G stayed behind with Tay, monitoring communications and the tactical display. 4 security officers remained as guards. Tay sat in the center of the room, cross-legged on the floor. He attached Sun's neural stabilizer to his temple and closed his eyes, beginning the meditation techniques all Novans learned as children. Normally, Novans used these techniques to connect more deeply with each other, sharing thoughts and feelings in perfect harmony. Tay had never used them as he was about to, as a weapon. He pushed that troubling thought aside and focused on his breathing, on the energy flowing through his body. Gradually, the sounds of the command center faded. Even his awareness of his own body diminished as he entered the deeper state of Novachem, the mind-open state. In this state, Tay's consciousness expanded. He could sense the humans around him more clearly, their fears, hopes, determination. Beyond them, he felt the void-like presence of the Vrax throughout the base, and further still, the bright points of life that were the colonists, moving toward safety. Distantly, he heard Lieutenant G's voice. Tay, can you hear me? He nodded slightly, maintaining his trance. The diversionary teams are engaging the Vrax in sections B and D, G reported. The largest concentration of Vrax forces is in Section C, between us and the evacuation route. That's where we need you to focus. Tay directed his awareness toward Section C, sensing the cluster of emptiness that represented the Vrax forces. With careful focus, he began to project his thoughts outward. Novans rarely projected thoughts to non-telepathic species. It was considered impolite at best, invasive at worst. But now Tay pushed his consciousness against the void-like minds of the Vraks, seeking any crack, any opening. At first there was nothing. The Vraks' minds were closed, emotionless. But as Tay pushed harder, he felt something. Not emotion as humans felt it, but a kind of collective awareness, a hive-like connection between the Vrak soldiers. That connection was their strength, but it could also be their weakness. Tay gathered his mental energy and projected a single, powerful thought into that connection. Danger. The effect was immediate. The void-like presences scattered, their formation breaking. Tay sensed confusion spreading through their ranks. "It's working," Lieutenant G reported excitedly. "The Vraks in Section C are disorganized, moving erratically." Encouraged, Tay pushed harder. He projected more complex feelings now. Threat, behind you, trap. The strain was intense. Sweat beaded on his blue skin and his breathing became labored, but he maintained his focus, sending wave after wave of disruptive thoughts into the Vrak's collective consciousness. Through Lieutenant G's updates, he learned that the colonists were making progress, now more than halfway to the evacuation ships. The diversionary teams were successfully drawing Vrak's forces away from the evacuation route. And his mental attack was causing significant disruption among the main Vrak's forces. Then something changed. Tay felt a new presence among the Vraks, stronger, more focused. A mind that pushed back against his intrusion. "Something's wrong," he gasped, nearly breaking his trance. "They're adapting." "Hold on," G urged. "Just a little longer. The colonists need more time." Tay struggled to maintain his focus as the opposing force grew stronger. The Vraks had some kind of mental commander, a being whose mind was not void-like but sharp and cold. It was organizing the scattered Vraks forces, countering Tay's influence. Tay changed tactics. Instead of broad projections to all Vraks, he focused his remaining mental energy directly at this commander. He gathered all the emotions he had experienced since the battle began: fear, courage, determination, friendship, sacrifice, and projected them in one powerful burst. The effect was like an explosion in his mind. Tay felt the Vrak's commander's surprise, confusion, and then, remarkably, the first flicker of fear. A being that had never known emotion suddenly flooded with the full spectrum of human feeling, transmitted through Tay's Novan abilities. The backlash was severe. Tay cried out and fell backward, the neural stabilizer sparking and failing. The security officers rushed to his side. "Tay!" Lieutenant G called, kneeling beside him. "Are you all right?" Tay's vision swam, his head pounding with pain. "Did it work?" he managed to ask. G glanced at her display. "Yes, the Vrak's forces are in complete disarray. The commander appears to have collapsed somehow." Tay nodded weakly. "I showed it fear, and hope and love, things it had never experienced." "The evacuation ships are launching," G reported, relief clear in her voice. "All colonists accounted for." Tay tried to sit up but found he couldn't. The mental strain had been too great. One of the security officers supported his head, offering him water. "Captain Han is requesting extraction for his teams," G continued, returning to her console. "They're falling back now that the colonists are safe." "Good," Tay whispered. "That's good." The next hour passed in a blur for Tay. His consciousness faded in and out. He was aware of movement, voices, the sounds of fighting growing closer. The Vraks were recovering from the confusion he had caused, pushing toward the command center once more. Then Captain Han was there, his uniform torn, face smudged with dirt and blood. "We need to move now," he ordered. "The last evacuation ship is waiting. Everyone to the landing pad." Han himself lifted Tay, carrying him as they evacuated the command center. Tay wanted to protest that he could walk, but his body wouldn't respond properly. "The colonists?" he asked weakly. "All the way safely," Han assured him. "Thanks to you." They moved through corridors, the remaining human forces providing cover. Tay glimpsed Sergeant Kim, bandaged but still fighting, covering their retreat. Lieutenant G coordinated their movements, guiding them along the safest route. Medic Sun, supported by another soldier, brought up the rear with the last of the wounded. When they reached the landing pad, a ship was waiting, engines running. The humans boarded quickly, bringing their wounded aboard first. Han carried Tay up the ramp and secured him in a seat. "What about the others?" Tay asked, struggling to stay conscious. "We're the last ones," Han told him. "Everyone who survived is on board. The ship lifted off as the last of the human forces fired final covering shots at the pursuing Vrax. Through the viewport, Tay could see the moon base growing smaller below them. The Vrax had won the ground battle but failed in their main objective. The central command room of the moon base had become the last stronghold. The Vrax had taken nearly half the base, pushing the humans back section by section. Captain Han, Major Lee, and the other officers gathered around the main display table, planning their next move. Tay sat nearby, watching and listening. Medic Sun lay on a makeshift bed in the corner, his wound treated but still serious. Tay had refused to leave his side, feeling responsible for the medic who had shown him kindness. The last evacuation ships are preparing to leave, Lieutenant G reported. 95% of colonists are now safe. What about the rest? Han asked. There's a group of miners trapped in the northern sector, G explained. About 200 people. They're moving toward the emergency landing pad, but they need more time. Major Lee frowned. We're stretched thin already. I don't know if we can hold the Vrax off much longer. We have to try, Han insisted. Those people are counting on us. Tay studied the humans' faces. They were exhausted, some injured, all afraid. Yet none suggested abandoning the trapped colonists. Their commitment to protecting others, even at great risk to themselves, continued to amaze him. Sergeant Kim entered the room, his uniform torn and dirty. Western corridor is secure for now, he reported. We set up barriers that should slow them down. Good work, Han acknowledged. Get some rest while you can. Kim nodded and moved to a supply crate where he began checking his weapon instead of resting. Tay noticed that most of the humans did this, used what little free time they had to prepare for the next fight rather than recover from the last one. A young soldier approached Han nervously. Sir, we've been monitoring Vrax communications. We can't understand most of it, but they keep repeating one word that translates as sensitive or receiver. Could they be talking about our communication equipment? Han frowned. Possibly. Lieutenant G, run a security check on all our systems. Yes, sir. G moved to a console and began working. Tay suddenly had an uncomfortable thought. Captain, he said quietly, may I speak with you privately? Han nodded and they moved to a corner of the room. I believe they might be referring to me, Tay said once they were alone. My telepathic abilities. During the fight in the medical bay, I sensed nothing from the Vrax, but it seemed to notice when I used my abilities. Han's expression grew serious. You think they can detect your powers? It's possible. Novans can sense each other's mental activities across great distances. If the Vrax have some similar capability, then they might be tracking you. Han finished the thought. Or interested in studying you. Tay nodded. My people would be valuable to them. Our abilities, though limited, could be weaponized by a species like the Vrax. Han ran a hand through his hair. A gesture Tay had learned indicated stress. That complicates things. If they're after you specifically, they might not give up even after the colonists evacuate. I should leave, Tay said. Draw them away from the base. No, Han said firmly. That's not how we do things. We don't sacrifice one to save many, especially not a diplomatic guest under our protection. Tay was surprised by Han's response, but it would be logical. One life against many. Logic isn't everything, Han replied. Sometimes principles matter more. We'll find another way. Before they could discuss further, Lieutenant G called out, Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity in our security grid. Something's interfering with the sensors. The Vrax? Han asked, moving back to the main console. I don't think so, G responded, typing rapidly. It's like shadows in the system, things appearing and disappearing. Major Lee joined them. They have infiltrators, special units that can mask their presence from sensors. Tay felt a chill. I might be able to help, he offered. If their technology affects machines but not minds, I could sense them even if your equipment can't. Han looked at him with concern. That would put you at risk. The very thing we're trying to avoid. I'm already at risk, Tay pointed out. We all are. Let me help. After a moment of consideration, Han nodded. All right, but you don't go alone. Sergeant Kim will go with you. Kim looked up from his weapon maintenance. Sir, you and Ambassador Tay are going to do some reconnaissance. He can sense the Vrax infiltrators that our equipment can't detect. Kim grinned. Alien hunting with the Blue Man? I'm in. They prepared quickly. Kim gave Tay a small communication device to wear on his wrist and a light armor vest that would provide some protection. Han gave them a map of the base marking the areas where the security system was showing anomalies. Stay alert, stay together, and don't engage unless absolutely necessary, Han instructed. This is reconnaissance only. If you find infiltrators, report back immediately. Understood. Captain, Kim said with a salute. As they prepared to leave, Sun called weakly from his bed. Tay. Tay moved to the injured medic's side. Yes? Be careful, Sun said, his voice strained. The Vraks, they don't think like us. I will be careful, Tay promised. Rest and heal. Kim and Tay left the command center, moving into the quieter corridors of the base. The sounds of distant fighting could still be heard, but this section was eerily silent. So how does this work? Kim asked quietly as they walked. Your mind powers? It's not mind reading, Tay explained. I sense emotional states, general thoughts. Most beings project their mental energy without realizing it. But you can't sense the Vraks? No, they are empty to me. But that emptiness itself is noticeable. Like a hole in the fabric of consciousness, Kim nodded. So we're looking for nothing. That's a new one. They moved carefully through the corridors, checking each room, each junction. Tay kept his mind open, searching for the strange void he had felt before. Kim moved with surprising stealth for someone so large, his weapon ready but not threatening. After 20 minutes of searching, Tay felt something. Wait, he whispered, putting a hand on Kim's arm. There's something ahead. Not human. Kim tensed, raising his weapon slightly. Where? The junction ahead. I sense absence. Where there should be something. They approached cautiously. The corridor split in 3 directions, all appearing empty, but Tay pointed to the right branch. There. Kim squinted, seeing nothing. You're sure? Yes, the emptiness is moving. Coming this way. Kim pulled Tay into a small alcove. Stay back, he whispered. I'll handle this. Tay watched as Kim prepared an ambush, positioning himself to intercept whatever was coming. But as the emptiness in Tay's mind grew closer, he realized something. Sergeant, he whispered urgently. There are 2 of them. Kim's eyes widened. But before he could respond, the air in the corridor seemed to shimmer. 2 Vraks appeared, their camouflage technology deactivating. They carried smaller weapons than the soldiers, more like tools than guns. Kim reacted instantly, firing at the first Vraks. It fell, but the second turned toward their hiding spot with unnatural quickness. It raised its weapon. Tay didn't think. He pushed Kim aside with his telekinetic ability, not strongly but enough to make him stumble. The Vrax's shot missed Kim by inches. Kim recovered and fired again, hitting the second Vrax. It collapsed next to its companion. Thanks, Kim said, breathing heavily. Good teamwork. Tay nodded, his heart racing. He had never been in combat before, never directly helped to harm another being. The fact that he had done so without hesitation disturbed him. Kim checked the fallen Vraks. These aren't regular soldiers, he noted. Different equipment. Lighter armor. He picked up one of their devices. This looks like some kind of scanner. They were searching for something, Tay said. Or someone. We should get this back to the captain, Kim decided, pocketing the device, and report what we found. As they turned to go, Tay suddenly stopped. Wait, I'm sensing more voids. Many more all around us, Kim tensed. How many? At least 6. No, 8. They're surrounding us. Kim activated his communication device. Captain, this is Kim. We've encountered infiltrators and eliminated 2, but we're surrounded by more, requesting backup. Han's voice came through, tinged with static. Understood, stay put. We're sending a team. But even as Han spoke, the air around them shimmered as more Vraks appeared, their camouflage deactivating as they prepared to attack. 8 infiltrators, all carrying the same specialized equipment as the first 2. Kim pushed Tay behind him, raising his weapon. Stay back, Ambassador. The Vraks advanced slowly, their movements coordinated but emotionless. Tay noticed they weren't aiming to kill. Their weapons were set to a lower power. They wanted prisoners. They want us alive, Tay whispered to Kim. That's not always better, Kim replied grimly, firing at the closest Vraks. The fight was brief, but intense. Kim managed to disable 3 more Vraks before his weapon was shot from his hands. A Vrax grabbed him, its forearms easily restraining the struggling human. Another approached Tay, who tried to use his telekinetic ability to push it away. The Vrax staggered but kept coming. Then the corridor filled with sound as human reinforcements arrived, led by Captain Han himself. The remaining Vraks were caught in crossfire from both directions. In the confusion, the Vraks holding Kim loosened its grip. Kim broke free and tackled the one approaching T. They fell to the floor, struggling. The Vraks was stronger, but Kim fought with a fury Tay had never witnessed when it was over. All the Vraks infiltrators were dead or disabled. But Kim lay on the floor, bleeding from a wound in his side where the Vraks had stabbed him with some kind of blade.